Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for coming back. In this series, we'll be covering introduction to Python programming, and also we'll be looking at the Python programming itself in the continuing or in the upcoming sessions, whereby I'll teach you everything you need to know to get started with Python programming. But now, before we go there, let's look at the introduction to Python programming. I'm George Mutembei. I'm a software engineer, and I like Python. So the next thing is the topics that will be covered in this session, and the first topic is what is Python, and sorry for that repetition. That is what is Python, and the next thing is why should you learn Python programming. The following thing is learning Python programming and for beginners, and also how long does it take to learn Python programming. So let's get started by the first question. What is Python? And basically, we can say that Python is an interpreted high-level general purpose programming language. It is designed to emphasize especially on code reliability, and which uses a significant adaptation. So you will basically be looking at how you can be able to code with Python, but we have said it is a interpreted high-level general purpose programming language. The next question is, why should I learn Python programming? Is because these days Python is one of the best programming languages outside there, and basically you can be able to do literally everything with the Python programming. For example, let's say you want to look at maybe AI, artificial intelligence. Python can be able to assist you to do that. You want to look at robotics, you can be able to do that using Python. You need to look at maybe data analysis. Python can be able to do that. Mobile programming, web programming. Let's come also look at automation of several work. It can be able to assist you so much to do that. That is the reason why you should be able to learn Python programming. These days, it is very difficult for a programmer or a developer to talk about programming languages without mentioning Python inside those programming languages. The next thing is learning Python and for beginners. So this is another question that you really need to ask yourself, not to ask yourself, but most of the beginners ask. So Python is basically mentioned, or it is basically considered among the easiest programming languages for beginners, especially the people who are starting programming and they have no experience before. For example, if you look at C++, it is not that friendly when it comes for beginners because it has very complex syntax and so on and so forth. So that's why Python is considered the most easy programming language to learn. Another thing is that Python is having very simple syntax that you can be able to have a look at. So in the next videos, we'll be looking at the syntax of Python, and you'll realize, by the way, it is very, very simple. How long does it take to learn Python for a beginner? So if you look at the internet, this is one of the most asked questions, especially by beginners. How long does it really take to learn Python programming? In this case, it depends with what do you mean, how long does it take to learn Python programming. For example, if you want to be that deep, you understand almost everything about Python, that means that it will take a little bit more time compared to the person who just wants to know the general concept of how Python programs are written, especially if you want maybe to go in deep learning, maybe machine learning, robotics. You will take a lot of time learning Python programming. But basically, to get started with the Python, you can take between a month to 2 months or even less compared to the time that you dedicate to learn Python programming. For example, a person who is taking maybe, let's say, 1 hour a day to learn Python, that means that this person will take much more time or much more time to learn Python programming compared to the person who is taking 4 hours a day to learn the same language. And therefore, it depends also with the time that you devote as an individual to learn Python programming. Another thing is also your experience. Have you ever been a programmer before? If you have been a programmer before, and maybe it doesn't mean that you have been that big programmer, no. Maybe you have written some simple HTML code, JavaScript code, maybe CSS code, and you want to learn Python programming. At least you have basically how programs work. You know, if you make a simple error, this is what will happen, compared to the person who is entering the world of programming for the first time. So basically, for beginners, it will take between 1 to 2 months to learn a simple syntax, simple programs and all that. But if you want to be that deep, it can take 6 months to 1 year to understand so many things. And also it can take a lot of time for you to be now the pro or the expert when it comes to Python programming. Another thing is that also it depends with how fast can you grab new concepts, especially for a beginner. And if you are that good in grabbing new concepts, it means that within a short period of time, you can be able to learn a lot. So basically, those are the few things that I wanted to have a look at before we start learning Python programming. And in the upcoming videos, we'll look at several other things. In the next session, we'll look at how you can be able to download, install, that is Python 3.10, and also VS Code on your machine. And without wasting much time, see you in the next video. Thank you. Hello and welcome back to this session. In this session, we'll be looking at the basics of Python programming. And in the previous video, I showed you how you can be able to download, install Python and also VS Code. In this video, I'll leave the link in the description down below so that if you don't know how to do that, you can be able to visit that. So I have opened my VS Code and I have created a file and named that file Python basic.python. So let's get started. The first thing is that you just write a normal Python program, that is just print into brackets quotation hello world full stop. If you run this program, you realize that the program just runs well, and down here you have an output which says hello world. Let's take, for example, write another program that says print to bracket I am an engineer. I am an engineer, and print that statement. You realize also that statement is printed down here. So basically, this is how you can be able to write your first program in Python, and you can write as many lines of program this way as you can. But in real life situations, this is not how we write Python programs, because there is a lot that do happen behind the scenes. So another thing is that you can be able to check if there is an error. Let's say, for example, you typed this program and you made an error that maybe you did not close this quotation mark, and you run this program. You realize that down here you get a syntax error where it says that this bracket was never closed. So you just come back and close that bracket so that you can be able to run your program perfectly. Another thing is, for example, if you type the word print wrongly, for example, you write print in that manner instead of writing the right print statement, then you write a wrong statement, then it will say name error, name whatever you named the print is not defined. Did you mean print? So you come back and change this one. When you change that one and you run the program again, you realize that the program runs perfectly again. Another thing is that, for example, if I have these two lines, there is no need of writing print hello world and again print I am a software engineer. We can be able to print this whole statement in one line in this way. So if I copy that and paste it there and run this program and run that program, you realize that we have the statement in one line. But what if, for example, we want this hello world to be at the top and also I am an engineer below that one. So let's comment this one out, or let's just delete this one. So if I run this one, you realize that it print one statement, but maybe you wanted the first line to be at the top and the next line to be at the bottom. So you can just come here and put \n and run again. When you run that program, you realize that both sentences are printed in different lines. So you can have as many as you wish. You can say again \n I love Python. So if you run this also, you realize that it is printed in another line. And to avoid this, just remove the space. To avoid this indentation, remove the space after n. So you realize that basically you can be able to, instead of having several lines printing, you can be able just to use that statement to print as many lines as you can. Another thing is, for example, if you wish to print, you can write program print. Instead of using double quotation, you can just use single quotation. But there is a problem, and I'll be showing you this problem in a minute. For example, I type I am a software engineer. So and close that. So in this case, this program is right. For example, if you write this way, it will not be able to execute because of this colon. That's why it is preferred mostly use double quotes instead of single quotes. But also you can run this one by putting backslash there, and it will run perfectly. So if you check that, you realize that the program runs perfectly. Another thing is, for example, if you have let's write another program, print into bracket, and forget to put bracket at all. You write hello world. You will also get an error, and this it says syntax error, invalid syntax. Perhaps you forgot a comma. So just make sure you remember that each and everything that you type here should be correct for it to be able to be compiled successfully. Another thing is, for example, if you are printing a statement and that statement contains, let's say, for example, print into brackets, comma, I am 20 years old. So this means that in this plain text, you can be able also to print numbers inside. You can also be able to print text inside, and anything that you wish to print inside here. So basically, that's all I can say about the basics of programming. This is how you should be able to know how to write your code in case you forgot maybe a comma, a colon, or you typed print wrongly. You can be able to troubleshoot that by just looking at the error which is provided below. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next session. In this video, we'll be looking at simple operations, that is subtraction, addition, division, and multiplication. Let's get started. First of all, create a folder on your desktop or in other place that you wish to. Let's name this one as Python and enter. Open the folder, click at the top here and type cmd. This is a shortcut of opening a folder directly to your VS Code. Type code, then space, then dot or full stop, then click enter. This will open VS Code directly to the place where you can be able to write your code. After the VS Code has opened, this is how it will look like. Create a file here. We can name this file as simple operations .py. In the previous video, I said why we should use the extension of py. That is because when the interpreter is interpreting your program, it will be able to understand that this program, it's all about Python. The first operation that we'll be looking at is addition. Addition is whereby you take two numbers. Let's say, for example, you have A and B and you want to add them and get an output. For this, we can be able to tell Python print into bracket 2 plus 9. So if you look at this code, we are just telling Python take 2, add it to 9, and then print the value that you get back. So for example, if I run this code, you'll be able to see down here, at the bottom here, we have 11. Let's say, for example, we have another number. Let's say, for example, print. Let's take another number, for example, 10 plus 70. So we know the output of this should be 80. When we run this, we get the first operations, which is the first statement, print 11, and the second one, print 10. So this is how you can be able to add two numbers using Python. So for example, you can do a more complex one, that is print into bracket, we say 2 plus 8 bracket 5 plus 9, then we print this. So if you know simple mathematics where we use BODMAS, we are telling Python solve this equation which is in this bracket first, then solve this one and add them together and print the output. In between here, we are supposed to have an additional sign so that it doesn't multiply. When we run this, we get 23. So basically, that's how we can be able to do addition or sum of two numbers or more in Python. The second operation is whereby we'll be looking at the difference or subtraction, whereby maybe we have a number that is A and B, and we want to see the difference between the two numbers. For example, if we say print, we tell Python to print, that is 10 minus 2, we are telling Python, take 10, subtract 2, and give us an output. When I run this program, you realize that it is giving us 8. Let me clear this. This was from the previous session. When I clear that and run again, you realize that Python is giving us 8, which is the correct answer. So for example, let's say we give it another number, that is print into bracket, that is 88 minus 88. So for example, you have A and you want to subtract A from it. What do you get? Definitely, we know we will get 0. So you realize that we are getting 0 out of that equation. We are getting 0 out of that equation. What if we subtract a larger number compared to what we have given? For example, we have print into bracket, that is 100 minus 120. So we are telling Python, take 100 and subtract 120 from that 100. In mathematics, you realize that you'll get negative 20. So let's see what Python will print from this. We realize we are getting negative 20. The next operation is whereby you'll be looking at multiplication. Multiplication is whereby you take two numbers and you want to multiply both of them to get the output. For example, if we tell Python print into bracket 2 times 5. So since in mathematics we doesn't have that cross multiplication, we use asterisk, that is star, to signify multiplication. So in this case, we are telling Python take 2 and multiply it with 5 and give us an output. So for example, if I run this program, you realize that we are getting 10, which is correct. For example, if we give it another statement, for example, print into bracket 2 times 2, we realize that it will give us 4, which is correct answer. So again, we can give it multiple arguments. For example, print into bracket 2 times 8 times into bracket 10 times 8. So in this case, we are giving it multiple operations that it should be able to calculate and give us back the amount of the correct number, So if I click run, you realize that we have our output here. Lastly, the last operation that we'll be looking at is the operation of division. Division is whereby you have maybe number A and you want to divide it among several other numbers. For example, we have print into bracket 4 divided by 2. So we are telling Python that we have 4 and we want to divide that number into 2. So you'll print when we run this program, you can be able to see we get 2.0. In the next video, I'll explain why when we divide two numbers, we get it with decimal 0, which is a float. A float is a data type, but don't worry about that. We'll look at that in the next video. Another thing is that we can take, for example, print again, and we say, for example, 150 divided by 5. And when we run this program, you realize that down here we are getting 30, which is correct according to the law of mathematics. If you divide these two numbers, you definitely get 30. Another thing is that we can give multiple arguments. For example, print into bracket 8 divided by 2, then divided by into bracket 10 or 20 divided by 5. So when we run this, you realize that we are getting also an output down here, and if for sure you solve this arithmetic, you'll be able to realize that the output is the same. So we can review what we have learned today. Is that we have learned addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. See you in the next session.